Hello and welcome to Witty-Banter. I'm your host, Marie Ryan. The topic today is how changing your mindset can change your life. Joining me today is Rob Duffy, who is a mindset coach. Hello, Rob. Welcome.
Hello there, Marie. How are you? Glad to join you today.
Thanks for being here. So, first of all, Rob, who do you help?
So, I usually help younger people in their early to mid career, and I help them with a range of things, romantic relationships, career, and just overall well-being and attitude and integration of certain identity parts that they might have a little bit of a problem with.
Okay, great. And what exactly is mindset?
Suppose mindset is all about what's going on in your brain. The brain is probably the most sophisticated thing on planet Earth, and most of us don't know how to use it because we're not given a manual for it, unfortunately. Um, so if you want to think of it like this, it's like the brain is the hardware and mindset is the software, which we regulate our self-esteem, how we have resilience in certain areas, and how we have an overall outlook. So the sort of attitudes that you have, the beliefs that you have in your life, and the things that shape your perception. That's generally what mindset is about. One of the big researchers on mindset is Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called Mindset. She's a professor over in Stanford University in America, and she talks about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And usually people come to me when they have a set of fixed mindsets, which people with a fixed mindset, they have a fear of failure. They usually avoid taking up big challenges out of fear, and they don't believe that they have the ability to develop and increase their knowledge or their skills. Um, I come across a lot of the same type of things that people tell themselves over and over. Like they say things like, I'm not good enough. I'll never be as smart as whoever they're comparing themselves to. Uh, and it's very limiting, obviously, to have that sort of a fixed mindset. So what I encourage people to do is to become obviously more aware of what it is that they're thinking about and what they're ruminating on, so that they can move over to have more of a growth mindset. And people with a growth mindset will think things like, I'm looking forward to a challenge. I want to learn from my feedback. I want to do more things, and experience richer uh, things in the world. So, that's what I hopefully encourage people to do through working with me. Yeah. So, in terms of improving your mindset, the the number one thing I would say is to get yourself a coach. A coach will help you see what you cannot see, and a coach will help you become accountable. Usually, people find it hard to become accountable because it's easy to lie to ourselves, basically, and we can tell ourselves lies. Accountability is literally rocket fuel for our ambitions, and when you work with a coach, they help you to see, what's going on in your mind, what you're believing, maybe that isn't serving you, and that's usually what I focus on first. Then, as we get into the coaching relationship, I help people focus on things like mindfulness or noticing what it is that they're continually thinking about in their mind, and to learn to let those things go, right? Practicing uh, just noticing what we're ruminating on and thinking about is a really powerful thing. And a lot of us don't do that. Our default setting is to just ruminate and think and believe all of the thoughts that come into our minds. And what I encourage people to think about is that, thoughts are just thoughts. You have thousands of them a day, and you don't have to jump down every single rabbit hole that your brain offers you. And as I move further into helping people, they become more self-aware, and I encourage people to journal. To This is one of the most powerful things on planet Earth, and writing your thoughts down can be incredibly powerful. To notice what is in your mind around everything. People have chronic stress and anxiety because they're thinking about things that are not serving them, and they're believing things that they probably shouldn't believe. So I recommend that people take, 15 minutes a day and just write what's on their mind. There's no wrong or right way to do it. Just empty what's on your mind onto a piece of paper, and that can be like talking to a good friend about something. Another strong thing that I recommend people do is to look at the people that they're surrounding themselves with. The personal development guru from the 60s and 70s, Jim Rohn, he said this uh, saying that we become the average of the five people that we surround ourselves with. And I think that that's mostly true. It's controversial, the empirical reality of that might differ. But in general, if you look around at who you're surrounding yourself with, are they having a positive or negative influence in you? Because we are a contagious and infectious sort of species upon each other, and there's peer pressure and there's social norms, and if your friends are valuing personal development, it's likely that you'll also value it. So it's good to just notice who's in your surroundings, and if the people in your surroundings aren't inspiring you, might be time for you to look to broaden out your social network and uh, get yourself around more positive people.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I too think that awareness is the first step for all of this stuff. Most of us are unaware of what we're even thinking, and we take it for granted that it's true. It might not be. It'd be great to have like a written dialogue or a written monologue of all the things that you actually think in a day. So you could go through them and say, well, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. But yeah, I do think journaling and mindfulness are a good first and second step into increasing that sense of self awareness. One other thing I keep reading about too is toxic positivity. What is toxic positivity?
Yeah, this idea of positivity no matter what kind of annoys me. It's closely related to this idea of spiritual bypassing. I think they're like peas in a pod. Did you ever hear of spiritual bypassing? Um,
I have never heard of spiritual bypassing.
so first of all, toxic positivity is basically attempting to whitewash your reality with some unrealistic thinking, or even to emotionally depersonalize yourself so that anything that isn't positive gets removed, right? So who people who embrace toxic positivity will almost feel guilty for feeling sad or angry or things like that, and they'll try to dismiss those difficult feelings or hide their emotions. And I think that that's awful, because we're human, right? We have the whole rainbow of emotions, and that's okay, because feelings are just feelings, and that's fine. We can all feel feelings. Um, and I see this in the coaching world, and it kind of makes me cringe sometimes. What I mentioned, this spiritual bypassing. This is the idea where people have a tendency to use spiritual ideas to sidestep or avoid some unresolved emotional trauma, or things like that. The example would be someone who continuously goes to spiritual retreats over and over. They might be masking some sort of a relationship problem or financial issue. They don't want to deal basically with their life. And now I empathize with that, but that as a tactic is not going to get you what you want. And what I would say to avoid that is that we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to look in the mirror and say, what's going on here? And that's again where a coach can help you, because sometimes we can't see what we can't see, and it takes another set of eyeballs to look in and have a look at what's actually going on for a person, because some people just want to run away from those bad feelings. they've a belief in their mind that says, I shouldn't be feeling this, so I'm not going to feel this. And this can happen in the workplace as well, where it's encouraged that people will hide some of their dissatisfaction with the way a company is going, and that has costs to a company as well, right? The people, uh, companies miss out on innovation, and they miss out in actual valuable feedback from their employees. So, this is it's awful. And this things like that people will say, you'll hear it in the social lexicon. You'll hear people say, stay strong, or just keep the peace, or always look on the bright side. These can be phrases of toxic positivity that we have to watch out for and be a little bit skeptical about, I would say.
Yeah. Always look on the bright side and telling people that. I think it's so dismissive. It's like saying, I don't want to hear this, so stop talking. But yeah, I think toxic positivity, I think it's more or less gaslighting yourself. If you're in a situation that you don't like, you have to tell yourself that you actually do like it, that it's supposed to be this way, and that the problem is you, not the situation. And I think it just makes you feel a bit more stuck, more so than anything. We're led to believe that everyone is supposed to be happy all the time. And if you're not, there's something wrong. But there's going to be times when you're not, like if you're busy, or if you're stressed with something, or if you're just tired. So being that level of positive all the time about everything, yeah, it's just a way of dismissing your own feelings and putting them on the back burner so that you don't have to deal with them in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like that sort of emotional suppression is it's just not good for us. We have to feel the range of emotions that we feel so that they can move through us.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what is spiritual bypassing?
Spiritual bypassing is that idea of using spiritual ideas and ideas from that whole realm to avoid what it is that is going on. Maybe there's some unresolved issue that people have, and they say, well, I just give it up to Gaia or Mother Earth. And there's loads of this sort of strange wooey stuff out there that I kind of cringe at. um
Yeah, some of it is good. Like, I'm a huge fan of meditation, but like that, I went on a meditation retreat before, and there were people there that go every month, and they say they feel better and they love it. But if you ask them, like, well, what's changed in your life? Nothing really, but you just feel better. But you could feel better in that quick way by doing anything. It's not necessarily going to have a tangible benefit. So yeah, I think it's another way of gaslighting yourself, really, without making any actual change, because changes are really, really hard. So if you can do something easy and just forget about things for a few days, it does give you the illusion that you're doing something, but in effect, nothing has really changed for you in a positive direction.
and it holds people back from moving forward to what it is that they really want to do. Usually some emotion is getting trapped, and they're suppressing it and keeping it down, and that becomes the focus of their life, to really suppress those emotions rather than actually deal with them and move forward to the next level.
Yeah, it makes sense. On a related note, I keep hearing about affirmations. So this idea that you have a mantra, and you, every time you look in the mirror, you say this line to yourself over and over again, and it makes you believe it, and sometimes it can make it happen. Do affirmations work?
Okay, so this is an interesting topic. My belief is that they do work, but what I believe is that people are getting the process wrong. We're always affirming things in our mind, both negative and positive. Like the people who believe negative things about themselves, maybe living in a fixed mindset, saying I'm not good enough, I can't do this. They're affirming that in their mind to themselves, and they're unfortunately living a horror show of believing those things, which are not actually serving them. Um, what I believe the proper way to do it is to first, you have to be aware of what it is that you're saying, recognize some of that default self-talk that you don't want to believe, and then when you identify it, sometimes we need to, because it's hard to go from a very negative statement or belief that we have in our mind to a positive. So what I recommend people do is to ladder their beliefs. And laddering beliefs means that you recognize what the negative is that you're saying to yourself, and you move it to something neutral. So an example might be someone might dwell on the fact that they're not a good public speaker. So they might say to themselves, I'm no good at public speaking. So a laddering would be to move to something like, I don't have much experience at public speaking, but I'm open to learning. That would be a neutral affirmation that you could say to yourself, that you could believe. And the whole thing about this is that you have to actually believe it yourself, right? A lot of the times people use affirmations and they don't believe it. They look in the mirror, they're saying these things, but they're not actually emotionally charged towards believing it in their heart. They know that they're BSing themselves. So you have to move towards something that is believable. So if that example of public speaking is believable to you, and you can get to that neutral point of, I don't have much experience, but I am willing to learn. When you get to there and you can believe that, then you can move to something more positive, saying, I'm actually getting better at public speaking. I'm able to stand in front of an audience for 15 minutes and tell a story or do whatever. So going from that negative to this positive is usually where people get very skeptical about it, because they try it and it doesn't work. And there's a reason it doesn't work, because they have an unrealistic expectation. And just to be a little bit technical, neurons in our brains, basically, neurons that fire together wire together, they say. And when people believe a negative thing in their mind, it strengthens that belief. So we have to first recognize that we have a negative belief, and then recognize that we don't want this negative belief. So we have to take action towards moving out of that. So that means creating new beliefs, like I mentioned, going to neutral, and then maybe going to something more positive. Because then we'll fire and wire better neurons in our minds that actually serve us and move us towards what we want.
That makes sense. Yeah, it does. As well as that, I think action has the power to change more than anything else. So if you go back to the example of public speaking, if you're like, I'm not good at this, you can use affirmations if you like, but I think you're better off to use a small action as well. So in that case, the small action could be reading a couple of paragraphs out loud. Then, because that'll prove to yourself that you can speak, that you can speak out loud, and that will be the first step. Then the next step might be speaking, preparing a speech in front of friends or family or whoever's at home, then taking another small action and another small action. So I think action has the power to change your mindset much quicker, in conjunction with affirmations, as opposed to just mindset alone.
Like, action is essential. If we're not taking actions to prove what it is, because it's one thing to have a belief, but if you don't pair that with action, you can't actually tell what the result of that belief is if you don't take the action yet. So we have to live the behaviors, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's why people who do spiritual bypassing and all of those things, they might feel better, but if you're not taking any of the actions, you're not going to see the tangible benefit. So yeah, I think it all fits together. I suppose the next thing would be resistance. I know you talk a lot about that on LinkedIn and on your website. What exactly is resistance?
Yeah, so this is the idea that I suppose is most famous by a guy called Stephen Pressfield. He talks about resistance being like the seeds that sets off our procrastination. If we think about uh, uh, undertaking a new big project that we have, the blank canvas, but the first step is usually where we encounter our resistance the most, because a cascade of an avalanche of thoughts will come into our mind. Oh, this feels uncomfortable. And that's the resistance. It says, I'd much rather do some scrolling on Facebook or some scrolling on LinkedIn, or have a conversation, or watch a show on Netflix. And that's the resistance in essence. And what that's telling us is that, okay, this is hard, and we may not have broken this plan or goal down into very specific steps that we need to take. Um, and that's usually what resistance is. And again, it comes back to awareness, understanding what is going on for us that is creating that idea. But usually what it points to is that there's a real value in what it is that we're attempting to do. Um, it's like a villain in a movie, I suppose. That in a movie, there's always a villain, but at the end, we all have a happy ending at the end. So that sort of idea of a resistance tells us that, it might look like the villain in the movie, but it plays its part because it has a lot of value for us to undertake that thing and move towards it. It might be hard, but at the end of it, it's going to be worth it.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that before. When you encounter resistance, view it as a villain in a movie that needs to be defeated. That's really interesting. I suppose as well, if you did listen to it a little, it might tell you something that you need to know or give you some advice to make whatever it is better. Like, for example, if you want to learn the piano and your resistance might be saying, you're not good at this, that might be a sign that you need to practice more regularly rather than maybe once a week, maybe 10 minutes a day. So there might be some insights from it. I suppose related would be, how can you tell the difference between resistance and a clear sign that you shouldn't do something? So if we go back to learning the piano, supposing, right, you want to learn the piano, at which at which point should you give up? If you practice every day for a month and you're getting nowhere and you're still feeling the resistance, like, how do you know when it's resistance and a clear sign that it's just not for you and you should move on to the next thing that you're resisting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So as- within all of this is the idea around how you're setting goals. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the SMART methods, where we should look at goals and break them down into specific, measurable, action oriented, realistic, and time bound. And putting our goals through that filter, like the example that you gave, it might illustrate that the person learning the piano has not been realistic in terms of what they can achieve in such a short period of time. And maybe they need to extend um, and break their goal into milestones rather than, we all want the glory as soon as possible, but sometimes that's just unrealistic, unfortunately. Um, sometimes when I'm at the gym, I work a muscle set and I feel pain. So there's this sort of a feedback mechanism in terms of how we're listening to our body or how we're listening to our capabilities that we need to integrate as well. So when I feel for 2 days the pain in my chest after doing a workout, it tells me, okay, look at a different muscle group to work the next time I go to the gym so that I avoid that pain. So, and again, this is why working with a coach is really necessary, because sometimes we might skip practicing or we might skip the actual um, actions that we told ourselves we would take. And if we're not accountable to someone, we can just, it's easy to lie to ourselves and just move away and say, no, not doing that today, going on to something else. So there's all those different issues that we have to take into consideration. But it's like, it's the razor's edge, I suppose, between understanding what that clear sign is and what's actually a resistance going on within us, because we really we have the power to overcome resistance if we're honest with ourselves, but it's hard to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And on a related note, how do people deal with imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. This is super common. This is the idea where you might see a pattern in your life where you doubt yourself a lot, or you fear that you'll be exposed for being a fraud. And I've experienced this. I think a lot of people experience this, especially when they go into business or if they undertake like a leadership position. Um, so again, mindset is important with this because it allows you to understand what it is that you're saying to yourself that is giving you that sense of the imposter syndrome. So for me, I joined a leadership organization back in 2015, 16, and I felt very overwhelmed because there was a lot of smart people there. And I was thinking to myself, what am I doing here? I'm a fraud. I was a little bit older than a lot of them. And I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but I gave myself a bit of a pep talk and I said, you're here based on merit. You're not here just because. It's not random. And that's a telltale sign. People can be super competent, but they can still doubt their ability to belong. And when I gave myself that pep talk, I was able to fit in. I embraced my unique perspective and my own value, and I ended up becoming quite successful in that organization. We won some awards and whatnot. But I learned that it often stems from our belief about ourselves compared to other people. And usually a lot of the problem with imposter syndrome is that we put other people up on a really high pedestal and we put ourselves down here. And that's wrong. We have to be realistic. Um, a really good thing to do is to open up to people, because so many people experience imposter syndrome, and just sharing your experience with people allows other people to open up and share their own experiences. So, don't go it alone if you're experiencing that thing. I would say open up to somebody. And again, having a coach, helps you with that sort of stuff.
For people who are possibly job hunting or looking to move jobs, how can people, like, what kind of mindset helps people to find their dream job or their dream?
Yeah, so I help people with this quite a lot. Mindset's really important. You know, job searching is quite stressful. Um, but the mindset that you bring to it can really help. LinkedIn is amazing, and I think that that's where myself and yourself connected. A stat that I seen last week, and it doesn't surprise me really, is that 50%, 57% of people are getting their jobs now from LinkedIn. So new opportunities arise there all the time. There's a whole section where you can look at job opportunities. And what I really recommend people do is they fix up their profile. So there's certain areas on your profile that you can really shine and dazzle people that are looking for talent. That's your banner, um, your about section, and your experience. So to really stand out, you need to do something that makes you stand out, make yourself look like an interesting person. Um, Another thing that you can do is talk to people, network on there. It's not like other social media platforms. People are open to having conversations. And what I recommend people do is to reach out to companies and people working within those companies that they admire and that they want to work for, and just start a conversation with them. Because the thing about this is that it's people that help people get jobs. So if you're in the network of people that are working for companies where they're looking for talent, if you're in the mind of somebody who works in a department and an opportunity arises and a new vacancy arises, you could be on that person's mind to get that job, and they might reach out to you and say, "Oh, do you know what? We're looking for someone in the department. Maybe you might apply." And having that foot in the door with the connection can actually, like, I've worked with people and I've told them to do this, and they've gotten jobs and they've gotten interviews because of that method. So I would say reach out, identify people. Now, don't go wild on LinkedIn. LinkedIn will restrict your profile if you add too many people. So just be mindful that if you're spamming lots of people and you're adding too many people, you may get a restriction on your account. So don't do that. I think you can add 10 people a day. So I would really recommend doing that. And another thing is, a lot of people self-sabotage themselves in terms of the CV, cover letter process, and even in interviews. So what I would say is to practice those things. Always customize your CV for the job that you're applying for. Don't use the same CV over and over again. I worked in recruitment for about a year, and one of the biggest annoyances of hiring managers is the fact that there's irrelevant experience on their CV, and hiring managers will take a slight at that because they'll go, they're not respecting my time. That's very annoying. They've put in that they were a barber and this is a job for, data analyst. Uh, it's irrelevant, and they'll automatically put them in the no pile. So just empathize with the hiring manager and understands that, they're looking through thousands of these CVs every day. If you can get your CV down to 2 pages, even 1 page, Elon Musk's CV is 1 page. If you can get yours down to, if he can get his down to 1 page, you can surely get yours down to 1 page as well. If anybody's interested in that stuff, I've got a couple of uh, help sheets with those things. You can get in touch with me and I'll send them over to you for free.
Okay, great. Very useful advice there. And finally, for anybody who wants to get in touch, how would they do so?
Yeah, so you can have a look at my website, which is robduffy4coach.com. Or you can add me at the same handle on Instagram or Facebook. Usually I'm fairly active on all those platforms, and obviously LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn is probably my favorite out of them all to communicate with people, and the one that helps me get new business the most as well. So any of those channels is good for me.
Yeah. Okay, great. That was really useful advice. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, Murray.
Thanks for tuning in to Witty Banter. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, like, and share. You can get in touch by visiting the website wittybanter.com. That's witty-banter.com, or follow Witty Banter on LinkedIn to get updates as they happen.